I ended the last lecture on Akhenaten just showing the debate whether he was physically deformed or created in some sort of artistic way. Here gives you a better idea. Some of these other pictures from this time period depicting him and his family. Again, you look at his body, how he's portrayed, and this is not. He almost looks feminine, right? And elongated. Some say he looks like an alien. Yes, that theory is out there. But there he is. What is different though is that his wife though doesn't get portrayed in that way, and so that's also something to take note. Here is one of his daughters, same, and look at here, Nefertiti. Look how beautiful she's depicted. Of course, I'm sure she had her eye, and the other one here, but this is very different the way that she's depicted compared to him. And again, you can see how beautiful she's made to look compared to the way he's made to look. So that's just something to take note of. Okay, but just to kind of go further into explaining some more about his legacy, though, he switched the capital to a different location, and there's an archive there that is discovered of a correspondence he had with clay tablets. And this is important because this is a documentation of Egypt corresponding with Canaan. Canaan is significant, and that is the promised land of the Bible. That is also the land of what will become Israelite territory, or the land of the Jews according to the Bible. And so there's this correspondence between that land. Remember, we talked about how Hittites and the Egyptians were fighting in that region over territory. Okay, so ancient Palestine / Canaan / ancient Israel / modern Israel and Palestine. Now that area has been kind of fought over by various groups and influenced by various nations for some time. It's something that I want you to kind of think about. And what's interesting is that most of what's written there is not in Egyptian hieroglyphs, but in Akkadian cuneiform. Do you remember where the term Akkadian comes from? That this was an ancient Mesopotamian language. So that's peculiar, to say the least. Why using that language to correspond? And then this correspondence expands only about 30 years, but it does shed a lot of light on Egyptian relations to Babylonia, Assyria, the Mitanni, which I haven't talked about them, the Hittites, Syria, Canaan, and Cyprus. And so we're seeing that Egypt wasn't in isolation, okay? And so then here's the big topic that comes up, and we're not going to cover all this, but I'm just throwing this out there because this is why I really wanted to address him in the first place. There's a question: did Akhenaten's religion of Egypt influence Israelite religion? And if it did, that means it influenced, Israelite religion. We're talking about the ancient religion of the Jews, which then forms into Christianity and Islam. This is a very important theory for questioning a major influence or not on the three great religions. Okay, now they have a hymn to Aten, which I'll show you there. Oh, well, it's right here. Sorry. If we look here at this next to Psalms 104, it starts off the hymn to Aten. All flocks are at rest on their grasses, trees and grasses flourishing. Birds flow from their nests, their wings, in adoration of your life force. All flocks prancing on foot, all that fly, and delight living as you rise for them. And the same kind of language, and then at the end, fish on the river leaping to your face, your rays even inside the sea. So here's a dedication, a hymn to Aten. Now we go over to Psalms 104. It says, "Bless the Lord, you who coverest thyself," and this is the older King James style of language, right? "You coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and the trees, where the birds make their nests, for the stork, the fir trees at her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats. And then we go down the end. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, or many believe the whale, whom thou hast made to play therein. Now, you may see the similarities here. It may not seem so straightforward. The content is similar. It's not arguing necessarily that Psalms 104 is plagiarizing the hymn to Aten. What's just interesting to note is the similarity in the theme and the language of the two. Okay, now what does that mean? Is it not possible that they're not related? That the same kind of inspiration could have been written down by someone else, in a different land? That's for you to decide. C.S. Lewis, many of you are familiar with him. He bought into the argument that there were similarities in Psalms 104 to the hymn of Aten. Okay, and he's a very famous Christian writer. Sigmund Freud. This is very interesting. If you've heard of Freud, he was a famous psychoanalyst, right? Talked about the unconscious and Oedipus Rex complex, all this kind of stuff, and all these ideas that popularized psychoanalysis. Now, what a lot of people have not read or no longer remember, he wrote a book, one of the last books he wrote, called Moses and Monotheism. And he had a theory that he made that the majority of scholars do not believe right now, but was really well written and was not seen as a conspiracy theory or it was, in terms of the way he dealt with the scholarship, it was quite solid. It's just that the majority of historians discredit most of what he argued in there. But what's interesting is that he said his theory was that Akhenaten, when he fell apart, okay, and I didn't discuss this, after he dies, the ancient religion of Egypt and their priesthood come back to power. And they really loathe Akhenaten, and they do everything they can to destroy his religion and to reinstitute the religion of ancient Egypt and its status quo religion for untold centuries. They do this successfully. And so what Sigmund Freud argues is that a priest of Akhenaten was fleeing Egypt, but he pretended that this Moses as an Egyptian priest of Akhenaten, pretended to be Jewish, made up a story about himself that he was Jewish, basically stole some of the Jewish slaves that were in ancient Egypt, took them to the land of Canaan, and he took this idea of one God. And in Hebrew, the word for Lord is Adon and Adonai. So you see Adon like Aten. This is what Freud's arguing. And he said, see, that ancient Egyptian religion of Akhenaten was then transformed by this lying cult leader from Egypt named Moses. Now, Sigmund Freud was Jewish, by the way. And needless to say, the rabbis did not like his book. Christians have not, as a general rule, found much appeal in this theory. But again, he did work with a lot of interesting sources and thoughts on this. Again, most of what he wrote is discredited now. But I just think it's kind of interesting just to kind of show you the way that the legacy of Akhenaten, even though he was around for a short time period within Egyptian history, and that his legacy was squashed out by the old order he tried to crush, that it remains up for discussion if he is not one of the major influences of monotheism on the Jewish people and ancient Israelite religion. Ancient Persia had a religion that you could call henotheism, like I said, with an idea that there's one true God, Ahura Mazda, and he fights a false god, a lesser god named Ahriman. You have that kind of same story there in Persia as well. Now, the Jews do come in contact with ancient Egypt, as we saw, as Egyptians were even having military dominance of that land. But we also see the Jews also under the influence of the Persians. There's many debates about these topics. I'm not telling you that this is not a settled issue. Okay, just pointing it out. And that ends this section. And if there's any questions about what we've covered, please give me a call, and we will move forward from here. And next week we'll kind of tie in some more of what we just learned in this first chapter.